The broadcast started. So this is the Node.js Security Working Group meeting for October 12th, 2017. And let's see, Michael, do you want to add yourself to the Google document as present? And can
you paste it in the,
yeah, I'll paste the link. Here you go. Okay, let's see, do we have to review the last meeting? I'm digging it up. Meetings. That was last meeting. I just pasted its link into the Slack channel. So let's see. So there's some actions. Michael, you're going to document the security release process. You did that actually, and you also added the security working group to the meeting.
yeah, I documented the process.
Yep. We got the HackerOne demo. There's some discussion of the RubySec organization. And that looks like everything from the last meeting. I don't think there's much to talk about there. So I guess we can just move on to the agenda for this meeting. Let's see, there's a couple items in, I'll paste them in. And so the first thing is threat model for Node. Okay, well, I don't know anything about formal threat modeling. Is there anything we have to discuss that can't be discussed in the anything anybody wants to say about threat modeling? Like, does anybody have enough experience here to actually build a threat model or write something that would be useful?
Actually, I've done that in risk analysis, so it's not really far away, but I can probably start drafting something we can iterate upon.
I mentioned another issue too. I've got experience with it, but not documentation from a formal perspective. So I can lend, attacker perspective, but how that fits into, a formal model and which particular model we choose to use. I linked to a few of them, Stride and Trike and a few other ones, but selecting one of those and figuring out how we're going to document it would be a good starting point. But even just getting something informal down would be good.
Yeah. So what's the purpose? Are we trying to guide people who are trying to do attack, like look for security vulnerabilities? Or are we trying to, what is it we're trying to do?
So I think this came up due to the V8 team asking about what counts.
Right, because the browser, the difference between the browser and the server, right? The browser is dealing with the sandbox, so executing outside of the context of that sandbox is bad, right? So we have a different model typically. What we classify as a security issue versus not.
Right. Okay. So yeah, if somebody can produce something that's useful, that'd be great. I mean, I took a shot at it in the security README to describe things. I was hampered, as we kind of talked about before. So I was hampered because I wanted to link to conversations about previous things that had or had not been issues, but of course the conversations are all private, so it was harder for me to find fruitful examples. I'm hoping that as time goes on, we can expand the informal like security section with links to actual conversations about things that prove to be or not be vulnerabilities to kind of give people an informal idea.
Maybe the first responders, like on the mailing list, they could chime in with what they've been informally using so far.
I think I pretty much said it in that README. The informal thing is that is something that a remote attacker can do. Like, the gauge.
Well, I don't think you've been able to see the rejections, right? Because those aren't public or even available to those non-6 people.
Yeah, like I have some responses from them that I can post if they're cool with them. But it's more than remote, and some of them are actually confusing because they talk about things like confused deputy attacks that are fair game and non-remote attackers. So, like having them actually post these, I think would be good.
Okay.
Or I'm happy to post them like after I confirm with them that they're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd suggest that the less we need to block on people outside this group, the better.
yeah. I mean, can you? I mean, you guys are the security guys. I can't see a reason why not to. I mean, unless their responses had a subscript that could like never reveal this outside of our personal email, which I really doubt. There's no reason not to post them, I don't think.
Well, I guess since the mailing list is private, it seems like I might be breaching somebody's, potentially what may consider a private email. But
yeah, no, I definitely think checking with them first, like sending them saying, "Hey, we want to do this. Do you mind?" is a good idea.
Yeah, that would be polite. It would avoid any ruffled feathers. Anyhow, that would be great. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can see what lands in node.js/security in the issue tracker, but I don't know. And I know some of the ones there were discussed, and it was concluded that no, this isn't an issue. But I don't know about the ones that like just arrived by email to the mailing list and were directly responded to and rejected and never made it into the issue tracker. So yeah, those ones. That's an opaque process for the moment. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, we have some stuff. So Dan maybe can grab. Will get permissions to post some of their text, and there's the issue. So I'm typing in the wrong spot in the minutes.
yeah, I'm happy to do that. Oh, and I think like encouraging them to contribute text would also be good, as Devin was saying. But yeah, I'll send out some emails.
Yeah, any way we can get those is going to inform, where those boundaries are, whether those are right or wrong, and we can just sort of take historically what that's been, and then we can just, start adjusting that.
Okay. So any more we want to say about that? Like, is that enough for now? Should we move on to the next issue? No objections. Okay. Adding Daniel Kless to the security working group. There was no objections unless anybody wants to make an objection now. I think it's we're all okay with it. I mean, last chance for an objection. Okay. Boom. Done. Approved. We'll tell him. He's not here, right? Daniel? No.
I don't think he's here, but all right.
Nope. Okay. So, next issue 33, have Node become a CNA so it can issue its own CVEs. Michael, it looks like you're kind of there was a TSC agreement to do this.
Yep. That's sort of my next security working group priority, is to start thinking about what we need to do and start making it happen. So I'll own that, push it forward, and try and document it as I go.
I particularly, I found it useful. It was helpful. If I understood what the guy from HackerOne, whatever, said about the CVEs, is people can actually use their CVEs for anything. So we are the primary and like only ones who will issue CVEs for Node itself. I guess that's what being a CNA means. But for the third-party vulnerabilities, we can either get HackerOne to issue CVEs for us, or we could issue the CVEs ourselves. And I think we can just kind of see which works best once we have that process going.
what I was going to do was focus only on Node Core, and then separately we should figure out what we want to do for, you know, the third-party packages.
I have a feeling that once we get that CNA process down for core, the third-party stuff will be fairly easy.
Yeah, I think, you know, I agree. Once we understand it and having done it in the first place, it'll be a good time to figure that out. The other thing is I do think we need additional volunteers to handle the third-party ones.
Agreed.
So, yeah, that's what I propose. Let's get the core one in place, and then we can decide for the third parties as well.
Adam, did you find that people, did you get CVs for vulnerabilities that you found?
So, yeah, as part of our process, well, I've got opinions about CV, but I'll leave those out. As part of our process, we were requesting CVEs for quite a while. When reports would come in, we try to get the finders to sort of coordinate that themselves, just because of the workload. But yeah, so we'd request those. We'd get absolutely no response from MITRE, and then we just sort of move on, and that would get lost in the shuffle. We'd have people, you know, that it was just kind of frustrating. So being a CNA will alleviate a lot of that problem, because we'll just assign those. We won't have to wait for, you know, MITRE or some third party to sort of like get back to us on those. We can just associate them right away. HackerOne is going to, we've got a whole bunch of vulnerabilities that don't have, I think it's like 400 that don't have CVs assigned to them, and HackerOne has offered to sort of bulk assign them. So we're going through that process, and then we'll do another dump of the data at that point, you know, for the working group, and you know, so that we have up to date sort of like data.
That's great info. Is there anything else to say in here? Michael, is there anything you need from the working group? I mean, or anything that anybody but you has to do in the short term?
The first thing I need to do is find a bit more time to think about it. And if there are some things, I'll make a call out in some of the issues.
Okay, so is that for that particular one?
I think so.
I think so too. Okay. Okay, then what was the other one? 53. So I dumped a bunch of notes, but I mean, I guess I would say the next thing to talk about is we down at the, you know, in the informal meetings at the what is it, the at Nina, we talked about how to kickstart how to act, what we actually need to do in order to get sorry, I'm not speaking very well today, to get the third-party vulnerability process kicked off. So actually, I tried to write up a to-do list. I'll just add it right now to the to-do the doc there. So it's issue 54. I dumped it into the Google chat as well. But I think the to-do items are, I mean, one thing was to just set up the storage for vulnerabilities and seed it with the NSP data. And I did that. So we have the JSON files in the GitHub repo. It's kind of low tech, but seems like people are happy with that. The next things on my list were, or the list of things I remember, was to do the HackerOne setup. So I need to have some teams set up, to have people invited, and I assume there'll be some little bit of configuration for the workflow, like in there, or maybe there won't. Does Vladimir, I think Semi volunteered to do that setup. Are you still willing?
Yeah, totally. I'm available for that.
Okay. I'm gonna stick your name beside that thing then in the to-do list. What's your handle again?
On GitHub?
Yeah.
Videochuken.
I think that what would be good to go along with that is if we end up with a doc in our repo, which is like, here's an onboarding for HackerOne. So, you know, if we need to add a new security responder, what's the procedure? And, you know, I think that how to invite additional people for a particular security issue, sort of like have some doc for the key things that we're going to need to do ongoing, right? That makes sense?
Yep. Okay. I added that to the list there. Document the process. The next thing I had on the list was implement a script to pull vulnerabilities from HackerOne into GitHub ready JSON.
So as soon as the HackerOne is set up, I should be able to look into that.
Okay. So the next one was kind of implement a script to pull new vulnerabilities from the node security project. So ones after the data dump into GitHub ready JSON. What I've seen, that's just a straightforward HTTP request and kind of iterate through IDs to see which ones are missing.
Yeah, I think the biggest part there, though, Sam, is setting it up so not only to be able to collect this stuff from NSP, but also you know, how are we promoting other vendors? You know, or is that just going to go in through HackerOne then? You know, how are we going to, you know, from other sources, I should say.
So I think right now we're kind of in a transition time. I would hope that once vulnerabilities can be reported to the Node Foundation and we have the email address and the HackerOne set up and we have a way of, you know, completing the loop so that the ones would have, you know, once we've got that whole process, I think we can get out of trying, like, I don't think we want to be in the business of scraping anybody's vulnerability database. So that you would.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So I guess I think the point there is I should make it clear that this is a temporary measure until, you know, we have our full.
You know, I would suspect that reports into us will slow down, you know, and then we can, if we do usher anything through, it'll just go through the normal process, the HackerOne process. So.
Yeah. Would you, I think, well, I got the impression would you start, like if people try and report them to you, would you start telling them to not to and just report, like point them to the node security page and tell them to do it there? Or would you?
There's a lot of people that just start sending it to like report at. So what we'll probably do is we just split that off and, you know, have it CC us and send it in, right? But we'll definitely encourage that, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, was there something else you want to say? Or?
Well, you know, that's the hard part is sort of encouraging, you know, getting other vendors. You know, it's advantageous for us to get those reports first, obviously, right? Because we can put in our product and whatever. But I really think that encouraging those to go to the foundation and, you know, kind of getting vendors to encourage other vendors, especially members of the foundation, to do that would be good. So.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think that's kind of a more medium-term task. I mean, once we have a process, we can get inviting people to participate. Until now we're just vaporware, really. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, the next thing I think so once we have the HackerOne and we have like set up and we've got the process documented, I think the last two things are just basically turning the switch. We have to PR change to the email address alias file, and that will trigger some changes in the infrastructure to direct vulnerability reports to HackerOne instead of the 6 individual email addresses. And then we need to PR change to node.js.org security, like the page there, the website. I don't know where that is off the top of my head. So to update the text so that third-party package vulnerabilities are reported to the Node Foundation instead of the Node Security Project. And at that point, I think I think we'd have a working process at that point. Is there anything missing there that anybody wants to bring up? Or? No? Okay, well, so that's there's that piece. What else did we talk about doing? Did we? There was a lot of talk about the membership thing, like who's going to be a member of the security team. Personally, I think that we could maybe. I think the reasonable thing to do is try and switch over the tooling so that we're using HackerOne, which I think enables different processes. But if we can kind of keep the same process for a minute, switch over to a new tool, and then engage people with with changing the process and changing the way permissions work, I think that would be a kind of a more acceptable way to kind of introduce this. Michael, I think that's what you suggested too.
Yeah, I made a few suggestions in terms of, who it might be once we get the HackerOne tool. But I agree. I think we should move to the new tool, and then we can refine based on what that allows us to do. I mean, my overall suggestion was that, I was thinking we don't want to limit it to just people doing the work, because I think like the TSC has some sort of responsibility to make sure that the list doesn't grow. And unless there's visibility, that's a bit hard to do. So I was thinking, it still makes sense for the TSC to have visibility, but beyond that, then it would be the people who are actually doing the work day to day, because it sounds like the HackerOne tool will then let us pull in like specific expertise as needed, right? But I think, to answer your first question, yeah, I agree. Getting HackerOne in place and then looking at that makes sense to me.
Okay, so that will happen kind of as a side effect of the issue we just talked about. Like once the email address starts to point to HackerOne, things will just get reported there. So I don't think there's much more we have to do there other than make sure that like the 6 people who are currently getting the reports are in that initial invite. So, is there anything else we need to bring up, like or any to-do items we have about that and the whole security team membership problem, like right now? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. We talked about third-party NPM package triage. So I actually should bring it up here. So when reports come in onto through to the Node Foundation about vulnerability reports on third-party packages, some group of people needs to look at the reports and say that fits, or that is a vulnerability, or that's just you spamming me, or whatever. So we'll need some, I guess, volunteers to be on that group. While we're down at Node Interactive, Vladimir said that he'd be willing to. Daniel Kless also said that he would either be willing to do it himself or have somebody in his company who would do it. Lance from Red Hat said that he was pretty sure Red Hat would be able to find somebody who'd be able to do that. Is anybody in here interested in being on that triage team that gets third-party package reports?
I think Daniel told about nominating someone too.
Daniel Kless?
Yeah.
I might, but I don't want to commit fully just yet. I need to figure out some schedule things, but I could potentially.
What sort of qualifications are required there? Does this need to be somebody who is fairly well versed in security, or just somebody to review things?
Based on what we've got historically, Bryce, is that usually it's a coordinator type role, right? Have enough skill that you can sort of discern whether it's it's going to involve research, right? Because some things are obscure and it's sort of on a case by case basis. Sometimes it's really technical, and sometimes it's just like, yep, that's a cut and dry vulnerability. So, or that person can bring in and coordinate the right expertise to determine it. We also have really weird situations where somebody reports a vulnerability and it's sort of on a case-by-case basis, right? It's if you use it in this way, and then you sort of get into that nitpicky discussion back and forth. So whether that's a common case for the module or not, historically that's been our default answer, is if it's a common case for the module. Otherwise, it's sort of a one-off. So I don't know if specialized security knowledge is required, other than somebody that can coordinate it, can bring in, can identify what sort of expertise is needed, and then can facilitate that discussion, that back and forth, and know what the process is and can assert it.
All right. In that case, then I can probably, generically promise some resources from my company. It might not be the same person every time, but we can help.
And Last Node I think it was Last Node Interactive, I had some discussion with Intel, so they might have some resources that they'd be willing to donate or have involved. I don't remember who that was at this point, but somebody might be able to facilitate that conversation.
Okay. Maybe we can wait till we actually have like the HackerOne. I mean, it's good to know that there's, without some people offering to do this, I think we'd be dead in the water. I think there's at least a handful. When Vladimir's got the kind of the basic setup going, I guess at that point we'll need to get actual people committed to it who can be added to the group.
You can list Michael Alexander too.
You're willing to work on that too, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Any more to say on that topic, or can we leave it for now? Okay. So again, just still kind of going over, because this is the full security working group. Well, I mean, the full as in everybody who decided to show up. What are the privacy expectations for the triage team? So this was brought up down at Node Interactive. There's currently no written policy for people who are members of the @node.js/security team, or the 6 people who get the initial emails, or the people who have access to the node.js/private repo where patches are prepared to fix vulnerabilities. So this was brought up with the kind of the larger collaborator working group as well, with a bunch of TSC members. And as far as I can tell, there's really broad agreement that the policy should be something to the effect of you as an individual cannot disclose anything about any vulnerable issues that have not been publicized, including that they exist or have been reported or are under discussion. But there also seems to be broad agreement that that should be documented somewhere, that people should probably indicate that they agree to that policy when they join the teams. I really don't know how to move that forward.
So what does that actually mean, right? It's right, like suppose somebody has an open source project and they find out about a vulnerability and then they patch up their thing first. Are we preventing them from doing that?
No, because those people are not part of the Node.js/security. Oh, sorry. What do you mean by?
So,
so
like whoever is bound by this, right? Suppose they have a private project that they then can patch because they learn about a vulnerability that they're triaging. Should we bind them to not do that because that might itself reveal information?
I would think so. I mean, that's effectively communicating, knowledge about that.
Yeah. I just mean like we should be clear about that, right?
Yeah, definitely. We've had some questions about, hey, can we go ahead and patch it? And we've always treated that as no, that would effectively disclose it.
Yeah, and so what's been sort of like, you usually have that embargo date, right? Is that, you know, sort of date when those things can be coordinated. So you sort of like you construct the patch, you have it private, you test it, and then, you know, on that embargo date, it's like there it goes. It's just coordinated. So
Right. Now, in that case, I think that would be once we actually had a procedure for sharing with other companies, right?
no, I mean, even just the disclosure process in general it takes that into consideration. But
well, I guess, yeah. Well, I guess what I meant was, even if so say there was, maybe I'm missing some of the context because I didn't quite listen to the previous discussion, was that if somebody's part of the security group, is aware of one of these vulnerabilities, it doesn't necessarily let them patch that within their own organization so that they can release the same day as Node does. Right? The discussion seemed to be that there shouldn't be any leakage so that, you know, everybody's on the same foot. Is that what you're talking about, or is that something different, right?
I mean, that's definitely gray area, right?
It's kind of been that. I mean, that's sort of where I thought the discussion was. You know, okay, zero being part of the security team doesn't give you an advantage over anybody else. So then, therefore, that would be part of that, right?
I think so. There's two things here. One, let's say, you know, I think it's Dean mentioned, like if you have an open source project, so you personally have an open source project where you're going to patch it. If you wait till the embargo date, you've effectively informed no one else. Let's say your company has a product that would be affected, you would be informing somebody else by patching it internally at your product. So I think just clarifying that, right? So you would be effectively giving your organization a heads up, even if you had not released that patch yet. You know, now there's been discussion about having that sort of like early access list for either members or whatever, but barring that existing and saying that the line is either you keep it confidential to yourself, that would be the split I would see.
Yeah, agreed.
Out of curiosity, maybe we should clarify whether that applies to closed source things as well. I'm fine either way. I just want to make sure that we're clear.
So what do you mean by closed source? I mean, we're talking about knowledge of vulnerabilities in Node itself, which is not closed source. So.
Sure, but let's say that you have a closed source, you know, fork of Node, for example.
No.
Closed source products derived from Node?
Yeah, exactly. And so let's say you were able to release something that patched this security vulnerability ahead of time, even though you're not disclosing, you're just doing a release that has this fix. Should we cover that as well?
I think that should be covered because, you know, you can reverse engineer, even if, you know, you don't have the source, you could potentially reverse engineer what the problem was. And so I think that's disclosing it in maybe not quite as easy as to consume way, but still disclosing it.
Yeah, people have done it for years with Microsoft or OS.
Yeah,
bugs. So
yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're clear because originally we would mention to open source derivatives.
Yeah, true enough. So from my point of view, like I haven't, nobody in any of these conversations have I heard yet to stand up and say, no, I think just because I'm on the security list, I should be able to utilize that information. So nobody's said that yet. Could happen.
I can give an example. So what we've done in the past is basically, you know, built on the patch, and obviously but never released until the release date. But having that lead time allows us to deal with any conflicts or you know, issues that would create a window of time of exposure after the announcement. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, there was also broad agreement that there should be some way for reputable companies, like people who we trust and who probably sign an NDA or something, to get early access so that we can have coordinated review. Like the two things seem to go in hand. So people seem pretty happy with, you know, just because you're in the security team and you can see this stuff doesn't mean you can tell or talk to anybody or do anything about it, except part of your work as a security team. But on the other flip side of the coin, there was a desire to have a group of people who would know early.
And I think that that's a slippery slope because, you know, what are the qualifications to that? You know, is it going to be notoriety or impact of a product, right?
That's always been exactly where the discussion goes. How do you make that list, right?
Well, the reality is that the list already exists, right? It's just being formal about it, right? Because like the people who are on that email list, they have access, and there's just nothing stopping them from doing this. So I think like actually communicating with companies that rely on Node, we should just be better about being open, and then like if somebody really screws up, then blacklist them, right?
So many of the people on the list have taken, well, claim and say that they do not in fact leak any information outside, even though they're on the list.
Sure, but it's about the lead time, right? So I totally agree, but right, like the lead time does actually like help people, and it can already help those few people. It's not like they will just blatantly ignore this and then after the embargo start patching.
Well, it depends. If we actually document that the expectation is that you do not reveal, you know, things that haven't been released to publicly inside your company, then that would be the expectation that they don't start patching until that happens.
Right. And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think, you know, the reality is sharing that with companies that have potentially high impact, you know, clients or large customer base or whatever, we reduce, you know, vulnerability and risk for our community. So
I think that's what Sam was saying before. There's agreement. We want to try and figure out how we can do that if we can. It's just you get stuck with the very quickly, like how do you cut off? Who do you say no to, right?
I think building in some repercussions would be a good idea too. You know, if somebody turns out to be a bad actor, then we have to have some sort of documented way of you know, disabling and preventing those sorts of leaks from that actor in the future.
Yeah, I like James's suggestion at Node Interactive, which was to try and get the foundation to engage in that side in terms of making like a legal agreement, you know, some sort of legal agreement that could include those kinds of things in them, right?
yeah, you can't just, I mean, being involved for just nothing. You have to, I think committing to, you know, some sort of agreement, even just, you know, this is what you're agreeing to, puts something out there, right? Instead of just being like, you're going to get everybody and then you're going to get some bad actors, right? So,
yeah.
The other part of that really is, in my mind, you're not necessarily going to know the bad action anywhere near an impactful time. So,
yeah,
policing that becomes a real enforcement is almost impossible unless somebody just goes and brags.
It's community enforcement, right? So,
yeah. So I don't know that much about this. Like my feeling is that it's something that other large scale, like high impact projects do. Like I see it from the back end, like some of the DNS vulnerabilities with coordinated release. It seems like some of the OpenSSL vulnerabilities have coordinated release. So I was hoping that somebody in the TSA would either know or be able to figure out how it is these other organizations are dealing with this problem. Because I'm sure the same conversation we're having has been had, you know, with
OpenSSL and Jenkins and like, what did we have to do to get on the Jenkins early, you know, list?
Right, and you know, whoever is, oh, I'm blanking on the name of the, you know, the world's largest DNS stuff, you know, but whatever, you know, those people as well.
Yeah.
Time servers. And no more to the point, I don't think it's something I think we can, I don't think we can instigate that process. Like, basically, I think we should kick this back to the TSC, who probably will kick it back to the board. Like, what are the privacy expectations? I think really, I think everybody here is a general, again, every conversation I've been in, including this one, people have been generally like, it should be completely secret. Don't act on it. Pretend you don't know. And a general support for at least looking at pre-release access. But I don't know if we can do anything about this without kicking it back to the TSC.
I think though, if we kick it back, we should maybe give some expectations about what action we sort of what we'd like to get out of that sort of being kicked back, right? Like, this needs to be addressed. Here are our concerns, right? Like, I don't know.
Fair enough.
General guidance. I don't know. Maybe not.
No, I like the way you put that. Though, what guidance do we want?
Yeah, I think that's more on the legal side, right? We can't make that call for them, so.
Yeah. I would be tempted to, at this point, basically just open either one or two issues, one for the privacy expectations, one for the pre-release access. But they seem slightly interrelated. Like, talking about one seems to lead to talking about the other. We just did that, right? So I'm tempted to open one issue in the Node.js TSC issue, Node.js TSC issue tracker, and basically kick the conversation over there. And all of us can join in the conversation there, and then maybe the TSC would get involved as well. Unless, Michael, you're on the TSC, do you have a better, another suggestion for how to move this forward?
Sorry, can you just frame the question again?
Well, so we're talking about, how do we set the privacy expectations, or, document that policy,
Right.
and get everybody on the security team to agree to it, and I think the TSC to agree that it's the right policy. And then the other is, hand in hand with that, how do we get a pre-release access kind of program set up with some sort of reasonable binding and security and safeguards?
Right. I guess for the expectations, I would just write it as a PR that adds a document to our repository.
The SEC working group repo, you mean?
Yeah, it basically says, here's the expectations on people working in the security group who have access to this information. Reviewed among this team, and then once we're happy with it, ask the TSC to review. I can put it on the agenda just to ensure there's awareness, and unless we have objections, land it, and then that's it.
Okay. As a way of agreeing to it, my tendency would be to like write the text, PR it in with the names of everybody who's on the security group right now, and then maybe ask everybody whose name is there to PR in like an I accept or something as an indication that they agree.
Yeah, that could be part of the process, right? Like, the doc should say, here's what it is, and then, something like that's a good idea to say, hey, you don't get at, here's part of the process of adding somebody, and here's the step that sort of says the I agree bit. But I would cover that in the doc that says, here's the expectations and here's the process for people to confirm them.
I like that. I like that it would be a little bit more transparent too of who out there has this information.
Yeah, it also documents the existence of those groups and their membership. You can kind of find them, some of them. Yeah. That's pretty obscure. Okay. Well, so I'll take it. I can take maybe I don't know, a shot at describing that. Okay. And for the pre-release for the coordinated access, that though so how do we kick that off? That was James Snell was. Not that he gets to decide these things, but he was pretty strongly suggesting we should kick that into the board. Leave it there, the hot potato.
I guess I'd open an issue, document the context, and then, Miles is our board representative, so I would get his attention to say, the suggestion was we get the board, can you engage to make that happen? Because in theory, he's the one who needs to go and talk to them to say, yeah, is this feasible, not feasible, and so forth.
Okay.
And, by putting all the context in the issue, anybody else who wants to say, no, that's not a good idea or whatever also has the opportunity to comment on it.
Okay. I can do that too. So I'll do those two little bits of stuff. So that was the end, I think, of my notes on the informal working group meetings. Is there anything else anybody else wanted to bring up as?
I covered everything I had.
Okay. Okay, should we call it done for this working group meeting then?
Sure.
Okay, sounds good to me. I guess so. Next one will be 3 weeks from now. And yeah, we can ask Vladimir how he's been doing with HackerOne by that point. Yeah. No pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I guess, I don't know if we're anything formal, but let's call an end to this working group meeting. Thank you all for coming and participating, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Cheers, y'all.